We've talked about the call to action in the United States starting out at or around the year 2004. Even prior to that time, many corporations and law firms were doing an awful lot of work in this particular area, in this arena. But as the call to action has demonstrated, there is so much more that needs to be done. At our company, we are committed to diversity and to inclusion. If you will take a look at, in the United States, the question was asked, we talked about affirmative action. We have evolved from affirmative action to the word diversity, to now most people use the terms more and more of inclusion. It was mentioned earlier that we're talking more about just minorities. We're talking about all kinds of different inclusions. By having a breadth of input and a breadth of knowledge from all people, you do get a better product. Now, we know that any advances in this particular area that all of us have been working on for years and years are incremental at best. We talked about the standpoint of the business case, and we all have mentioned that it is very difficult to measure. And I will tell you, being a member of a science company, DuPont, we have just celebrated our 206th year in existence, and that's a long time, I know. It's been in existence. We have attempted to take advantage of the diversity on a worldwide basis. The DuPont company, as I mentioned, we have just celebrated our 206th anniversary, and over the last 2 decades of the 20th century, enormous demographic change have swept the United States, with minorities becoming the fastest growing segment of the population. And somewhat akin to that, currently, women make up over 50% plus of all law school graduates in the United States. So we start to talk about what happens to these law school graduates, but the demographics, folks, are changing. DuPont embraced the changes over the last couple of decades of the 20th century to focus on diversity and people as a core value for our company. From DuPont's perspective, to continue to be globally competitive, our company must have an employee base that is as diverse as the customer who buys our products, the shareholder who buys our stock, and the vendor who supplies us with goods and services, and, by all means, the communities in which we operate. The business case that we have mentioned, in fact, normally comes at you this way. An attorney asked you the question and said, all right, I know that it may be the right thing to do, but please tell me, Luke, why is it so important to your company, and why should it be important to my firm? Now, instead of me just basically saying, are you kidding? I don't believe that you asked that question. We take a positive look at this and said, all right, let's talk about this. And as I mentioned, as a member of the law department of a science company, I know that there are very few empirical studies that basically make the business case. We know there isn't a huge book that says if you do X, you will get Y out of this. And we know as lawyers also, unless you have 25, 30, 40 years of these studies, you are talking to deaf ears when you're talking to lawyers. So we prefer not to spend that kind of time doing so. We go from there to basically say that nevertheless, the arguments of that it is very good for the bottom line, very good for the causes of our company, as far as we are concerned, are unrefutable. At least that is what we believe. With a couple of people that talked about the dog versus the tail of the dog and et cetera. We look at this, we being corporate legal departments, look at us as being actually the dogs in this situation. Now, what that means is that we, as corporate law functions, for our major international and global companies, believe that having diverse populations, having diverse vendors, having diverse firms do our legal work means something. It is positive. And so as far as we are concerned, the business case doesn't need to be argued very, very much beyond that, because we believe in it. And forward-thinking law firms should understand that we're going to continue to push that. And they must or should get on board, and the ones that don't get on board, they're doing so at their peril. There's a global recession, and we're probably, hopefully, digging out of it now. But I say that to say that when you end up with a law firm that is still questioning these kinds of things, during these particular times, you have to wonder what kind of business sense are they utilizing. But these are the kinds of arguments that one would ask, why are you using these arguments when you need business? We have told you what it is that we're looking for, but you still continue to make the argument that, well, maybe that isn't what you need. We have reached the conclusion from a business case is this is what we need. It is a combination of things as our benchmark survey we evaluate. But once we start to see the trend going in the wrong direction, we have a yearly meeting with all of our firms to evaluate what you're doing. That is also inclusive of the survey. And we have had several situations where firms started to backslide, or firms just decided they didn't need to do certain things in these particular areas, and we told them that you have X amount of months or a year to get your program together, or you will no longer be a part of our network. Most of the firms understand that, and most of the firms have gotten their act together, and they're still part of it. But we have terminated firms for those kinds of reasons.